Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. Before I get into this video, just gonna put out a little broadcast. So there's two kind of updates I want to give you. One, hopefully videos will be coming more frequently, and two, I have been battling this kidney infection. It fully didn't go away, and I was put on more antibiotics, so that's kind of where I've been. So just kind of bear with it as I kind of get back onto my schedule of filming and work. So, by the title of this video, you know that we are going to be talking about a true crime case. Now, we are going to be talking about a child. We are going to be talking about kidnapping. We are going to be talking about disturbing things related to this case. So, if that is not for you, please feel free to exit out, and you can look through another selection of my videos, or just go watch rainbows and butterflies and whatever makes you happy. Please take care of yourself. Again, I am putting that warning in here, so feel free to exit out now. Before I get into this video, I just want to put out that I mean no disrespect for the people involved. Remember, please be respectful in the comments. You never know if family members will come across these videos and read the comments. So just please be respectful. So the case we're talking about is Holly Jones, and this case takes place on May 12th, 2003. It is almost 20 years since this case, but I remember it really well. I was 9 years old at the time. This case did take place in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, not even an hour away from me. This shook the communities around Toronto, including Toronto, and this case is pretty well known across Canada. So again, I'm just going to put in a last warning. This does talk about children. This does talk about kidnapping, murder, and other terrible things related to this case, so please feel free to exit out. So like I said, this case takes place on May 12th, 2003, so this was the early 2000s, of course, and Holly Jones was 10 years old at the time, and she was the absolute light of the family. She, was really well known for being mature, having a beautiful laugh, and just having this vibe that anybody who met her, you just got this vibe that she was just this amazing person, and you just wanted to be friends with her right away. There was no, there was never any problems with her. Like I said, she was very well mature for her age. She was 10. She did a lot of things that older children might have done. You'll find out in a minute. But yeah, she stood up for those people that were bullied. She protected them. She just wanted to not see any bullying or hatred. She was just this bright light. And unfortunately that light was taken away way too soon. And there is a phrase that is tied to this case that I absolutely hate. And you'll find out why later on in the case. But this phrase is wrong place, wrong time. Sorry. And you'll see why it's kind of irky, but without further ado, let's get into this case. So, like I said, Holly was a very mature person for her age. And on May 12th, she had a friend over. From what I read, they were at her house, and it was getting close to dinner time, and she volunteered to walk this friend home. And it was pretty much a straight path. This was on the west end of Toronto, so a very friendly, safe neighborhood. A lot of families lived in this neighborhood. There was low crime. I mean, there's crime everywhere, but it was low. Everybody in the neighborhood kind of knew everybody. Holly had done this multiple times before, and she was very protective of her friends, and cared about the safety, so she of course volunteered to walk this friend home. And her parents saw nothing wrong with it. I mean, she's done this multiple times. Her parents raised her well, not to talk to strangers, stranger danger, all of that. And So this was a normal thing, and off she went. She took her friend home, but unfortunately, she never made it back home. A few hours passed, and her parents grew more concerned, like, oh, maybe, she got talking at the friend's house or whatnot. But when they called the friend, they said no, she left like almost right away as soon as she dropped the friend off, and this sent out a red flag for her parents. This was, not a common thing. She always came straight home. If something did come up, she would give her parents a call. Again, this was the early 2000s, so at that age, compared to now, young kids didn't have cell phones. Unfortunately, that's more common nowadays. So right away, they got in contact with the police, and the police got on the search and issued an Amber Alert. Now, Amber Alerts weren't, they were still fairly new, especially here in Ontario and Canada. I mean, they were used, but they weren't, the power wasn't behind it. And, nowadays, it is flashed everywhere, tablets, iPhones, cell phones, anything. Back then, early 2000s, so technology was still just coming into play. So this just got flashed across the TV, the radio, on bulletin boards that are like usually on highways. Well, were on highways back then, and it was effective. A lot of people did come out and help on the search. Unfortunately, 12 hours later, on May 13th, a dog walker discovered 2 garbage bags on the Toronto Island Harbour, and this wasn't very common to find large bags. And the dog started to act really strange, and the Amber Alert was issued, and this person was aware of the Amber Alert, so right away they called the police, and the police came, and it was discovered that Holly Jones's remains were discovered in these garbage bags. She was dismembered and placed in these garbage bags. And this absolutely devastated her family and the community. Nobody understood what the hell happened. Yes, murder and crime were not common, but, were heard of. Just not this violence towards a child, a 10-year-old child. And this absolutely changed the course of how parents let their kids play outside, or let them, or I should say lack of letting them out alone or unwatched. It was an absolutely pivotal time where parents started to watch their kids more firmly, didn't let them out of their sights, and wanted to know every detail of, if they were out of their sights, what happened. Walking to school became a very, you don't do it alone type of thing. This shook the community and absolutely changed how children played and grew up. So right away, the police got into this case, and it was discovered she was strangled and sexually assaulted and dismembered. There were some fibers found on her body, and some DNA, and it was run through the system, but nothing. And it kind of felt like they were at a dead end. They retraced Holly's steps of which path she took with her friend as they walked home, and what path she would have taken home. And they really didn't have any clues. Like, it was just poof, she was gone. And then her remains were found. And it was absolutely devastating. And, sometimes you would find in a case that this is where it gets cold, it turns into a cold case. However, this case shook the community so much, the police knew they had to do something. So they came up with a kind of DNA sequence. So they went kind of further into the DNA and discovered that it was a Caucasian male. Now, can't really do too much with that. That's a couple million people, right? So what they decided to do was, in the community, do a volunteer where Caucasian males gave their DNA. They came and gave their DNA willingly. Now, there was a handful of people that didn't volunteer within the community. And police were suspicious, as all, of why. Some of them did have a criminal record, and that's probably why. But there was one person in particular, and his name was Michael Bura? I think that's how you say his last name. Not really fucking important, but whatever. We're there. And he was a 35-year-old male, and he was a bit kind of, and the police were very uncomfortable by him. I mean, they went to his place, asked, well, hey, we've been doing this DNA, why don't you want to give it, type of thing, or please give it. He didn't. And this was very suspicious because the other people that were, of course, criminals that didn't do this gave the DNA freely. And he was basically the last one that didn't really do it. I mean, there was a few, they were out of town or whatever. So what they did was they put this man under surveillance. And they discovered that Michael is a software designer. And, he was kind of squirrely and a little bit on edge, but the police didn't really have any evidence to kind of do anything. Then this one officer, or a few officers, got this grand idea. It was recycling or garbage day that day. And technically, when you put your garbage on the curb, that is no longer your property. It is basically free up. If you guys know that there's a certain point in your kind of driveway where it ends and it becomes basically the city's property. And that's usually at the end of your driveway, or in an alleyway or wherever your house is, there's a certain amount of where you put your garbage, it belongs to the city. So they collected this soda can from his garbage and matched the DNA to the DNA that was found on Harley Jones. So they went to Michael's residence, arrested him, and discovered that the carpet fibers that were found on Harley's body matched. And, it was kind of this random act, and the police did not understand why. It just seemed random. He had no connection to Holly, no relations, have never spoken to her before. It was a big why. So when they were investigating and talking to Michael, they discovered that he was into child pornography. And unfortunately, that evening or afternoon that Holly was walking home, he was viewing child pornography and stepped outside for whatever reason and basically saw Holly walking home and acted on those impulses to hurt a child. And that is where he grabbed her and sexually assaulted her and then eventually strangled her. And then kind of freaked out because he kind of, I guess, came out of this fucking haze and realized what he did. And that is where he got the idea to dismember her body and put her in garbage bags and try to, get rid of the evidence and toss away her body. And, just kind of left it at that. You know, he basically said when he was on trial, she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. That, you know, he kind of put it on her, like it was her fault that this happened to her. You know, he showed some remorse, but it wasn't there. Like, again, he's used that phrase like it was her fault, like if she, you know, it was her fault. And that really pissed off her family. It pissed off everybody. She was a child. She was 10 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her, and this sick animal, you know, acted on those gross impulses. So he was charged with first-degree murder, and he was charged with, you know, all those child-prone things. And this case was deemed cruel and inhuman and basically a nightmare, right? And, you know, I said it went to trial, but it didn't host like a full trial. So usually, you know, you gather the evidence, you go, a trial basically takes place and you kind of plead not guilty or guilty, and then it goes into a full-blown like jury trial. He pled guilty, and he didn't want to put the family through this kind of painful trial. So he automatically received a life sentence. You know, he pleaded guilty. He knew he was caught. Basically, all the evidence proved it. And unfortunately, because he pleaded guilty, that means he basically gets a chance at parole. It's a technicality that our justice system has. So if he didn't plead guilty, so if he pleaded not guilty, and it went to trial, and he was found, you know, guilty, and they could sentence him with a life sentence without parole, which means he wouldn't get a chance to get out. However, since he pleaded guilty, he does get a chance at parole. So his first parole, when he is eligible for it, is in 2028. That is not far off. That is way less than 10 years. I think it's like 6 or 7. No, not even. When 2021, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7 years. That is not fucking far off. And I really, really hope that they lock his ass away, that he doesn't get out. It is proven that he is a danger to children. That is a for sure fucking thing. It is just absolutely kind of fucked up how this guy was just like, yeah, it was Holly's fault, but I don't want to put the family through anything. Like, I don't understand how the criminal mind works, especially in cases like this. Her family was honestly ripped apart and is never the same, has never been the same. They put together 2 memorials that you will find in Toronto, and it is basically an art memorial. And, you know, her family has done the best to continue on with life. You know, they have created scholarships in her name. They have created a group for children that have been victims of unspeakable crimes. And they are just doing everything in their power to continue that light that Harley projected onto everybody. You know, she was 10 years old. She was a year older than me. She would have been almost 30 by now, with a whole life ahead of her, and it was just ripped apart by this animal. And it's just absolutely despicable. And like I said, this shaped and changed how children grew up. You know, I remember being, 6, 7, and 8 and playing out in the yard and playing out on the streets and just having a little bit of freedom. Like, we knew our parents were like around. And when the street lights came on, we knew to get our asses home. But after that, after Holly's case, it changed everything. Like, especially for me, because I was a female. My parents were more guarded. They rarely let us out of our sights. I was always kind of like attached to my brother. I apologize. It was very, like, children weren't, parents made it as normal as they could, but we felt the change. We were watched more. We were, again, especially for me being a female, like, my life was like very structured. And as I got up, closer to like middle school, so I was like 13 and 12, 13, I got a cell phone because my school was a little bit away from my home, and sometimes I did have extracurricular activities or whatnot, and I was to text my parents like all of this, like all the details of what I was doing and stuff. Because of this it changed so much. Parents were put on guard more, and it was just, it absolutely blew up, because this wasn't really heard of. This level of crime towards children was not heard of. And it just honestly shook the community. And, I remember coming home and hearing that, Holly Jones's body was found, and not fully understanding that. Like, I knew that she was missing, like something was wrong. And then, your parents had to try to sit down and explain that, this happened. And, the news isn't, I get that they, there's like the late news, okay, which I understand, like, it's at night, like, 10, and that's when the fucking details should come out. But like 5 o'clock, when people are sitting down having dinner, talking about the day, or watching the news with the kids or TV, putting it full out that this child was dismembered, and having parents having to explain that to their children is absolutely difficult. And I can't imagine the conversations my parents had going back and forth trying to figure out how they were going to explain this, because I had questions, and my brother was 2 years older than me at the time, so he better understood. He was like 11, so he kind of understood this a little bit better, but you still have questions and whatnot. And just trying to explain this and explain that, yeah, a girl your age went missing and then was taken from a family and was killed and, cut up into pieces. That's not a fucking conversation you want to have with your kids, but you have to, because it's going to be talked about at school. And the teachers, having to have that conversation, and, because children are going to have questions there and friends are going to talk. And it was just an absolute conversation that no child, like no parent should have to have with their child, and no parent should have to bury their child. And just to have all of that just kind of blow up in less than 24 hours, it's just a lot. And I can't imagine how Holly Jones's family feels. And, I know there's going to be people that say, well, it's her parents' fault. They let her out. You have to remember, this is early 2000s, okay? Crime wasn't as fucked up as it is now, and how frequent and how crazy. And again, crime wasn't, targeted towards children, or wasn't talked about in the news, or wasn't this broadcast, right? And, again, Hurley was very mature for her age, so she knew. But this guy was 35 years old and like 3 times her size, and of course overpowered her. And it is not her fault. She did a beautiful thing by walking her friend home, making sure her friend got home safe, and was just going to come straight home. Less than 10 minutes, people. Less than 10 minutes. And in the blink of an eye, everything changed. And, you know, everybody's going to be quick to point, and there has been a lot of people to blame the parents. And for that, I just think, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, a child lost her life in the most horrific way possible, and you are here trying to rip her parents apart. Like, fucking get a life. Honestly, that is just the point. I just can't imagine, you know, I don't know. This case was just absolutely devastating, and I so desperately wish that Holly Jones was here just to experience life and experience what she could have been, the highs, the lows, the everything. And, you know, this is an absolutely disgusting case, and I really hope that Michael rots away in jail and doesn't get out. And I think that the community will come together in 2028 and freaking say no to that, like, and will absolutely stand with her family and support them, and, you know, shout at the justice system not to do this, not to let him out, to just let him stay there. Anyways, guys, I am going to leave this video here. It's a long one, Jesus, and I am absolutely exhausted from doing this video because shit, my health. But anyways, guys, thank you for tuning in for another video, and remember, please be respectful in the comments below, and just send some love out to her family and to Holly herself. Remember, she was an angel taken way too soon. She was 10 years old, guys. Anyways, I hope to see you guys soon in another video. Fingers crossed that, you know, my health goes up from here. Anyways, guys, bye.